week 4 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 kickers. I'm ranking this week number 1, Brandon Aubrey of the Dallas Cowboys. So Brandon Aubrey, he's been one of the best kickers in the league over the last season and change. He could kick it from anywhere. Last week he hit a 65-yarder. I know this week the weather conditions could be a little off in New York where it possibly could rain in this game, and it's a Thursday night matchup. But like I said, Brandon Aubrey last season was automatic, and so far this season he's hitting it from anywhere is Aubrey. So once again, he's the number 1 kicker. Number 2, Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs. So a good matchup indoors at the Los Angeles Chargers this week. And Harrison Butker is picking up where he left off over the last few seasons. A clutch kicker, now 50-plus yards, couple seasons. He's got confidence and he's hitting those field goals. And this week in a ball game in Los Angeles where I think attempts will be there for Harrison Butker, and this Kansas City Chiefs team has had trouble in the red zone early on this season. I think, once again, Butker has a good performance. Number 3, Evan McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals. I know McPherson's missed a couple in the early going, but he still has one of the best boots in all pro football. Last week, another double-digit game, so 2 weeks in a row now with double-digit fantasy points. And this week, it's going to be a ball game where they're going to go up and down the field once again, I believe, is the Cincinnati Bengal team at the Carolina Panthers. I know last week the Panthers went out there, had a great ball game, beat the Vegas Raiders 36-22. But Evan McPherson, like I said, his range is unlimited. I know he missed one last week, and he's been a solid kicker the last few seasons. And this Cincinnati Bengal team, the problem was their defense last week, not the offense. I think McPherson gets a few opportunities and has a good game. Number 4, Ka'im Fairbairn of the Houston Texans. So last week it was just a game for the Houston Texans that you throw out the game tape and you forget about it for Houston. Fairbairn, he missed a long 50-yarder in that one. He only had an extra point where they lost 34-7. But the thing is here, back home, division matchup where it could be close early on, then I believe the Houston Texans will pull away in that ball game. But Fairbairn, he's got unlimited range. He's a good kicker. And like I said, last week was just a down week overall for this Texan team. Number 5, Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens. It might be surprising he's down a little bit here, is Justin Tucker. But so far this season, he hasn't been automatic. And it's something I mentioned a couple weeks ago that from 50-plus yards, he's definitely struggled the last couple seasons, is Justin Tucker. So this week, matchup versus the Buffalo Bills, Sunday Night Football. I believe we'll see good scoring from both teams. But Justin Tucker's scoring has been down so far this season. And like I said, those 50-yarders have really given him trouble. But he's still a kicker. They have confidence in to go out there and have a decent fantasy day. Number 6, staying in the same game, Tyler Bass of the Buffalo Bills. So Tyler Bass, he's been solid many seasons for this Bill team. I know at the end of last year, he had trouble kicking some 50-yarders as well. But this year, he's kicking the football well as Bass. Last week, I know he missed one, but it was a blowout game. And if he's going to miss one, you do it when the game's out of reach and it don't mean much. This week in Baltimore, Buffalo knows they got to keep their foot on the gas, got to keep putting points on the board. They could be Baltimore and go 4-0. That's a huge victory for this Buffalo Bill team. And Tyler Bass, like I said, he's been a big part of this offense for seasons, kicking some long field goals. And this week, I think he gets some opportunities. Number 7, Braden Narvison of the Green Bay Packers. So far, 3 games, all double-digit fantasy games for Braden Narvison. And this Green Bay Packer team's an offense that stalls out at times. And this week, it's a tough matchup on paper versus Minnesota, where they're creating turnovers. They're getting to the quarterback, creating a lot of sacks and making plays. And this week, they might have to settle for some field goals. And this one is this Green Bay Packer team. So like I said, to start the year, 3 games in a row, double-digit fantasy points. And it wouldn't be surprising to me in the game versus a bend-but-don't-break defense in Minnesota that Narvison puts points up. Once again, number 8, Jake Moody of the San Francisco 49ers. Week 1, Moody went out there with over 20 fantasy points. In the last 2 weeks, it's definitely been a struggle for him. But I think this Niner team, they reset a little bit. They're going to have a good ball game, I think, versus New England Patriot team. And Moody, yes, he's been shaky with the 50-plus yarders. He missed a big one last week where that ball game most likely would have went to overtime if he hit it early in the game. But Jake Moody's got a good boot. They drafted him in the NFL draft last season for a reason. And I think after 2 bad weeks, he bounces back. Number 9, Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a patented type of Chris Boswell game where it's going to be low scoring. Indianapolis, for the most part, their defense has been good at home. Then it's been on the road over the last few seasons. An indoor game, which is always a plus. And Chris Boswell, we know he's going to go out there and gets at least 2 or 3 field goal attempts, where this Steelers team's had trouble all season punching in the end zone, where they've been settling for field goals, especially week 1 where he hit 6 field goals. So once again, I think opportunities will be there. And obviously being indoors is always a plus as well. Number 10, Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Falcons. So far, numbers haven't been all that great for Younghoe Koo, but this Atlanta Falcon offense has been inconsistent in the early going. So Younghoe Koo back home in Atlanta, we know he loves kicking at home, and his road home splits are great. It's an indoor game, which obviously is always a plus. And this week they know they're going to have to put up some points in this one, because I think between these two teams we could see high scoring from division rivals. We see some big plays in these games between New Orleans and Atlanta. So I think Younghoe Koo back home, once again indoors where he's comfortable, has a good game. Number 11, Blake Grubb, staying in the same game of the New Orleans Saints. So week 1, monster game for Blake Grubb, over 20 fantasy points. The last couple weeks, numbers tailed off a little bit, especially in week 2, where they found the end zone in that ball game was the New Orleans Saints 5 times versus the Dallas Cowboys. So this week at Atlanta, I think opportunities will be there for Blake Grubb. I believe both teams are good points on the board, but also these are both defenses that are pretty decent in the red zone, where both kickers, I believe, will settle for field goals a few times in this game. And the 12th and final kicker I'm ranking is Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks. I was between him and Jake Elliott for the final spot on this list, but Jake Elliott, he's struggled over the last couple weeks, and this Eagle team, for the most part, they've been punching into the end zone when they get down there. So right now, Jason Myers, 2 out of 3 games, double-digit fantasy points. This week could be a potential shootout on Monday Night Football at the Detroit Lions. And another kicker kicking indoors, which is always a plus. And I think it adds value. Maybe some people don't think it adds value for kickers in fantasy football, but it definitely does. Some coaches, if there's no elements, they're going to trot out a kicker for 50, 55 yards every time almost. And with elements, they're either going to punt or go for it, depending how many yards they have to get. So I think indoor games, you can never go wrong for the most part with some of these kickers. And I think Myers on a pretty high-powered offense and in the potential shootout at Detroit has a good game. So that's the top 12 kickers I'm ranking for week 4 of the fantasy football season.